Hello everyone, welcome to Kroll's Emerging Threats Weekly Brief for the 26th of May 2026. My name is Ryan Hicks. With me today is Mark Messer and Jeff Deng from the Threat Intelligence team. Today we are covering an Nginx critical vulnerability exploited soon after disclosure, the Belarusian actor FrostyNeighbor targeting the government sector, marketing covering Storm 02949. So 2949, looking at an updates of them targeting Microsoft data. And finally, Jeff is looking at both mini Shai-Hulud and also a supply chain attack affecting GitHub Actions. So first up, have a critical Nginx vulnerability tracked to CV 2026 42945. Now under active exploitation, with activity observed within 3 days of public disclosure. Patch updates were available at the time of disclosure, so it really left a limited window of remediation before exploitation began. The issue is dubbed as Nginx Rift, has a CVSS score of 9.2, and is a heap-based buffer overflow affecting both Nginx open source and Nginx Plus, including F5 deployments. So the vulnerability itself can be triggered remotely without authentication, allowing an attacker to crash Nginx worker processes, therefore causing a denial of service. Exploitation does depend on specific rewrite configurations, meaning that kind of whilst exposure of the service itself is quite broad, the subset of kind of configuration requirements potentially makes the attack surface slightly smaller, so certainly something to consider there. As I mentioned before, in default conditions, successful exploitation typically results in denial of service. There have been some separate research demonstrating that that same vulnerability could be leveraged also for remote code execution, where specific other configurations are present. So potentially both kind of denial of service and remote code execution here. It is worth noting that there is also a public proof of concept code already available, as well as obviously being exploited in the wild. So recommendations, of course, patching affected deployments immediately. Looking at reviewing the rewrite rules to identify the configurations that make exploitation possible, potentially changing and reviewing those, and also monitoring for any kind of crashes, repeated worker restarts, and anomalous HTTP requests that are consistent with signs that the vulnerability is being exploited. Okay, next up, looking at some ESET-linked reporting, and this is on an actor they identify as FrostyNeighbor, as a Belarusian-aligned actor, and looking at their activity against the Ukrainian government organizations, in this case since March 2026. As I mentioned, targeting government as well as military and also other critical sectors, kind of regularly changing delivery mechanisms throughout. His latest campaign begins with spearphishing emails carrying malicious PDF attachments, and victims are directed to attacker-controlled infrastructure where server-side validation and geographic filtering is in place to determine whether the victim receives a benign decoy or a malicious archive containing a JavaScript variant of Picasso loader. Once executed, the malware displays a decoy PDF whilst establishing persistence, collecting victim data for review, and then there's a kind of additional layer of assessment by the operator where they identify whether the target's valuable, and if so, they will then kind of manually deliver additional payload that installs Cobalt Strike Beacon, as well as sort of further tooling and including some additional persistence in the registry and shortcut mechanisms. So certainly very targeted in both being sort of those server-side validations and geographic filtering, but also kind of more hands-on filtering whether the target is valuable. So certainly kind of consistent with more of an espionage type mission rather than kind of the opportunistic crimeware as we see. So organizations particularly, of course, in Ukraine and also neighboring states should be aware of and monitoring for PDF-themed law chains, unexpected archive delivery, and JavaScript-based loaders. Also looking out for monitoring for scheduled tasks or sort of strange scheduled tasks, unexpected registry persistence, suspicious run DLL32 use, and that Cobalt Strike style follow-up behavior kind of remains central for the monitoring here. And with that, I'll hand to Mark.
Thank you, Ryan. Microsoft detailed a multi-stage campaign by Storm 2949, starting with identity compromise and resulting in broad theft from Microsoft 365 and Azure environments. The actor appears to have focused on exfiltrating as much data as possible from high-value cloud assets. The initial access method relied on a legitimate Microsoft functionality, abusing the self-service password reset by socially engineering users into approving MFA prompts, and then resetting passwords, removing registered MFA methods, and enrolling Microsoft Authenticator on attacker-controlled devices for persistence. Once inside, the actor used Microsoft Graph API for directory discovery, then accessed OneDrive and SharePoint to download sensitive files, including VPN and remote access documentation. From there, the intrusion expanded into Azure application services, key vaults, storage, SQL and virtual machines through SQL databases and virtual machines through abuse of legitimate role-based access control permissions and management plane operations. Storm 2949 used VM access and run command to create rogue admin access on virtual machines, attempted to disable defender controls, and deployed Screen Connect from attacker infrastructure to support credential harvesting and hands-on keyboard activity across endpoints. For organizations, the strategic lesson is that strong endpoint controls alone are insufficient when the attacker can inherit trusted cloud administration paths. Security teams should focus on phishing-resistant MFA for privileged users, conditional access, least privilege in Azure role-based access control, monitoring of high-risk management actions, and immediate investigation of suspicious MFA, re-registration, and mass download events. Recommendations are to enforce phishing-resistant MFA, review all privileged user authentication methods, audit Azure role-based access control assignments, app service publish profile usage, key vault access, and storage key retrieval. Investigating mass download activity from OneDrive and SharePoint and unexpected MFA method changes will also be very important. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Mark. Jeff.
Thank you, Ryan. The latest mini Shai-Hulud campaign is affecting the NVM NPM ecosystem with over 300 packages compromised and millions of downloads at risk. Researchers linked it to Team PCP and described it as a self-propagating supply chain attack that spreads by abusing trusted developer accounts. The malware runs when an infected package is installed, targeting both developer machines and CI/CD systems. It steals tokens, keys, and other credentials, then uses those to publish more compromised packages, allowing the attack to spread quickly across the ecosystem. What makes this wave more dangerous is that removing the malicious dependency may not fully stop the intrusion. Researchers found the malware can persist through modified developer tooling and background services, meaning attackers can maintain access and continue spreading even after cleanup, turning a single compromised machine into a launch point for wider ecosystem exposure. Recommendations we have are reverting impacted packages to verify known good versions and temporary pause automatic dependency updates to prevent further spread, reset all sensitive credentials used on affected systems, review developer tooling files, recently published activity and logs to identify any unauthorized changes or suspicious behaviors. Next up, we have GitHub incident. A separate supply chain incident compromised the action issues helper GitHub action by repointing version tags to a malicious comment. Workflows that reference the action by a tag instead of a fix should unknowingly pull altered code. This could happen automatically during the next pipeline execution without any change to the workflow file. The payload was designed to target the CI runner environment directly. It downloaded additional tooling, accessed runner process memory, and extracted secrets while jobs were running. Those secrets could include API tokens, credentials, and other sensitive data that are typically concentrated within build systems. The incident also highlights a broader issue with how GitHub actions are commonly used. Tags are often treated as stable version markers, but they can be modified at any time. This allows attackers to change what code is executed without triggering a new review, turning tag-based dependencies into a hidden but significant supply chain risk across pipeline. Recommendations we have include replace tag-based GitHub action references with full known good commit SHAs, rotate secrets exposed to recent workflows runs that use the compromise action, review runner logs for suspicious downloads, memory access, and outbound traffic to attacker infrastructure. Thank you. Back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks also again, Mark. So that's all we have for this week. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, please contact us at cti@kroll.com. Thank you, and see you next week.